on another very special Black History episode of Michael the Comic Nerd. That's right, I said two. It's a whole month, motherfuckers. Deal with it.
Instantly demonetized.
Mother.
Yeah, you fix it in post. I don't care.
I don't censor creative outlets here.
I told you we going raw. We going raw.
All right. So it is so interesting. First off, everyone, welcome to season 9.
Season 9.
Dear Lord, we've been doing this for 9 years. I know, it's crazy. No one did it for a goddamn decade. And
you're a freaking TikTok star now, bruh.
I guess so, which is weird. It's not how I imagined this going, but I'm kind of going along with it. So if you're watching this now because you saw my TikTok videos, thank you. Anyway, this is not the usual caliber January movie we're used to talking about.
Truth.
So this is gonna be very much like I'm assuming like the Ma Rainey's Black Bottom video we did a few weeks back.
Similar, only this one is a bit different because Ma Rainey and the instances in which she's existed was much more historical in nature in that film than this one is. In this one, it's historical figures having a 100% fictitious interaction.
Okay.
This actually didn't happen.
Okay, good to know.
So let's frame it that way.
Yeah, it's a fictional account of One Incredible Night. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, so this one's also based on a play.
Yes, which a very good one apparently that I haven't seen and didn't know anything about till I saw this movie. So I am full of shame for that because it was that good.
Yeah, I mean it's and directed by first-time director Regina King.
And Regina King is a first-time director, but she's been around the industry forever. Regina King is Huey and Riley in the Boondocks. She plays them both.
Yes.
Okay.
You know, but she goes all the way back to A Different World. All of the Black Bill Cosby TV shows from the 80s. You know, those kind of things. She's been all around those circles for decades.
Cool. All right. And so, One Night in Miami is a movie that came out around Christmas last year, but it kind of got like limited release, and then I think it went wide earlier this month. So that's why I'm counting it for season 9 because fuck, it's my show. I'll reckon however I want. And it is about One Night in Miami, where Muhammad Ali, Malcolm X, Sam Cooke, and Jim Brown are gathered in this little hotel room to discuss their role in civil rights. I'm mostly reading out the synopsis right now. In around like 1964. That's the basic premise. That's basic premise. The structure-wise, this is another pretty straightforward film. For the most part, is a real-time bottle movie for like 3/4 of it, and then occasionally you'll have a different flashback or different scene in the beginning and end. But for the most part, it's a pretty self-contained series of conversations between these gentlemen and their role in advancing Black culture and the Black movement. And that is the basic setup for the movie. So,
sidebar. Also, this play takes the same basic form or basic style as another play that is famous for another fictitious historical interaction, which is called The Meeting. And that is a meeting between Malcolm X and Martin Luther King in a hotel room.
Okay.
So, yeah, right off the bat, I noticed the similarities. I have read that play.
Okay.
So I do know that one. But yeah, a lot of things are similar here, especially in the direction the conversation goes and how it all pans out, right?
Yeah. So let's just talk about the structure of the movie itself. Like before we branch off into the other different conversations you can have in this movie. Me and Grandma having something after we watch it together. The movie itself, by the way, excellent movie. I loved it. I thought it was a great movie. I thought like the writing, obviously, I'm assuming it's lifted directly from the play, is sharp. The acting is unbelievably good from everyone involved. The use of tension and escalation and the use and just how you do feel these personal stakes in these conversations alone is masterfully crafted. The use of film in producing like a kind of a bottle play like this, as tricky balance that is used to very good effect. Honestly, like I don't really have a lot wrong with this movie. I thought it was fantastic.
I'll point out one thing about the acting, and I'll be a stickler for it because I'm intimately familiar with all of the characters portrayed here, and all of these figures in Black history. Um, the physicality was off.
Oh, was it?
Everybody got the character up here. The lines are delivered vocally with precision, and you could tell they get the characters. There wasn't 100% of the time where they were in the body of that character. For example, the guy playing Muhammad Ali, literally I could close my eyes and it sounded like I was hearing Muhammad Ali. But him moving, dancing around the border, fighting in the ring, did not look like Muhammad Ali at all.
Yeah, because he had like, because like in the ring he had like really freaking fast foot movement like that. It's like you see the dun dun. It's like da 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 da, like in like one fell swoop.
Yeah, let's put it this way. Sports Illustrated was there when he fought Sonny Liston for the second time. He knocked out Sonny Liston in 4/100ths of a second. And I blink. Okay? So if people blinked, you missed the punch. He punched him in the chest and he just gave him a right hand lead straight to the face and knocked him out before anybody knew what was happening. That's how fast Muhammad Ali was. Okay, yeah. So when I look at this dude, I'm like, nope.
Yeah, it kind of felt more like his post prison career, like in terms of like the
definitely after post Vietnam, I could totally see Muhammad Ali moving in that fashion, having that physicality. But this was his prime that we were looking at.
Yeah,
he was 22 when that happened.
Yeah, for context, I mostly know about these historical figures in the broad strokes. So in regards to the injuries like that, I'm just going to straight up say, like, I'm not going to notice that just because I'm not as familiar with it.
Well, yeah, and actually, I would like to extend my congratulations to Leslie Odom Jr., an actor who I normally do not like, actually embodied the character the best. He actually played Sam Cooke 100%. Was in his body, was in the mind, was in the voice. Congratulations. Not even a slow clap. No cynicism in that at all. I genuinely liked his performance. He genuinely did a good job.
I'm assuming he did the singing too, right?
He sang part of it, but at the end, it went back and forth between him and Sam Cooke.
Okay, so
that's how good he was.
Recording. Okay.
that's how good he was, because it takes a while for you to distinguish it.
Yeah, because I love Sam Cooke's music. The funny thing is, like, I didn't realize how much I loved his music, but then recently, like, just went through Spotify. I was like, oh, he did this, he did this, he did this, he did this. Holy.
Yo, no, like, for sure.
Yeah, because, I mean, it's like, I know a lot of these people, like, in their, I mean, honestly, Malcolm X, I'm not so well versed in, but, like, Muhammad Ali, in high school, I did a report on him, looking at his whole history. It's really interesting seeing how he grew up, how he got into boxing and all that. Sam Cooke, I love his music. Jim Brown, I knew him as a football player, but I really knew him as an actor.
Like, well, funny thing, you're right.
Yeah, because and it was funny because I was just rewatched one of his movies the other day, Running Man, where he was like one of the hunters. Of course, the one that I always remembered him for sure in was Mars Attacks, and I did not realize he was in the original Dirty Dozen.
Yeah, Jim Brown was old Hollywood.
Yeah,
like the old studio system, he was a part of that. And if you know him for nothing else, just know that Jim Brown is the only man to preside over a Cleveland Browns Super Bowl victory ever in the history of the franchise. They only won with him. As soon as he left, they've been cursed for years. Okay, they literally have not won since then.
I'm guessing it's like the equivalent of the Curse of the Bambino. It's the Curse of the Brown Jimmo or something like that.
Something. Well, I always joke like as soon as Jim Brown left the Browns, they're not the Browns anymore.
Yeah.
He took the Brown with him.
Yeah. But yeah. So like with all all that aside, like I freaking love this movie too. It was really interesting seeing like all the different political ideals that like each one had. Like they all, they wanted to go towards, that common goal of betterment, but they all were doing it through different ways. Each kind of stood out. Like some of them, as you saw, Malcolm X, he was as they mentioned, he was like that super kind of like black or white. I mean, not necessarily fully black or white, but it's like he was the one that's like, we have to do everything we can. like in the political verse, we have like Sam Cooke. It's like, I'm trying to beat, this system at its own game. We have, Cassius Clay and Muhammad Ali just trying to, as we've all heard, be the greatest. And, Jim Brown, he was definitely he definitely felt like the voice of reason of the bunch. Like, he was always the calmest one, even like when there's a part where he almost gets into a physical altercation, it's just because he was being provoked against one of Malcolm X's bodyguards, which also Lance Henrik. It was nice to see him in there as well.
It was nice
always
to see
love him.
Again, perfect casting.
Yeah.
So one thing I think should be said about Malcolm X that I think often people get misunderstood. Not saying that it was you, Grant, but something that people need to understand is that Malcolm X is important to this film because he made the careers of these men possible in many ways.
Yeah.
It was Malcolm X pushing the boundaries of the national conversation of Black America. That, like, and I'm not trying to be funny, is that he took such an aggressive stance that people like Muhammad Ali, Jim Brown, and Sam Cooke were allowed to be where they were because as long as it wasn't Malcolm X, they were cool with it. You know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of people don't understand that. Like, had we just had Martin Luther King on one side, it may not have been what it ended up being.
Yeah.
So it is.
Okay, I'll pick up on that really quick for you, Grant.
Okay, I was going to say, yeah, it is basically, to pardon the phrase, it was basically a case of good cop, bad cop, where they were like,
Well, yeah, and how they referred to him and had that reverence for him is because of that. They all knew that.
Yeah.
That he was an important catalyst in this national conversation that moved this forward.
But based on that, though, I did appreciate how they interpreted him here less in every other media I've seen them interpret Malcolm X before, which is very angry, very aggressive, and very almost villainous, confrontational.
He was very much that.
Was he? Okay.
He was very much that.
Well, this one felt like it had more of a humanity to it that I typically see in this kind of portrayal, which I really appreciated.
No, for certain.
It felt like it was I'm not saying that the way he put it on was a show, but the way they showed how who he was on the camera versus who he was behind closed doors. There's actually that certain not necessarily quiet, but definitely there's definitely a vulnerability there where it's there's almost some uncertainty behind him at times, or it felt like he. I'm trying the best way to describe it. I guess the best example I could think of is almost like Freddie Mercury on stage versus who he was off of it. There was you could see the power behind when he was on camera, but here when he was talking with Sam and Jim and Cassius or Muhammad Ali, they were you could see he wasn't quite as sure-footed. You could see him stammering more. You could see him
there's a reason for that, and the reason is this is keep in mind that this fictitious meeting happens just before Malcolm X is executed, Martin Luther King is executed, and the whole national conversation changes. In that time, he goes to Mecca and he comes back, and from that point forward, Malcolm X is a completely different person. He preaches unity. He is having open conversations with other races and people from other backgrounds. He is starting a different national conversation when he gets killed. He's completely different person, and a lot of the things that they're speaking about the Nation of Islam and where the corruption is going inside of the organization was very true, and he was being followed, and that's the urgency that you sense in his voice. That's the urgency you sense when he's with people he can trust. It is because Malcolm X, literally at this point in time, historically speaking, is being followed. The Nation of Islam, some people are talking to the CIA. This is documented.
Yeah, and I love that very small moment where they showed that.
And he is eventually murdered by somebody within the organization at one of his church meetings. He's murdered in public.
Yeah, because I knew about how he was assassinated, and I knew about the thing being followed. I didn't know about the corruption within the Nation of Islam stuff going on. So that was an interesting insight to like see, because and I knew about the change he made, but I didn't know that was the why.
Yeah, it's long been rumored that there was nefarious things going on where they presented a very different public face than how they were behaving in secret. Again, a lot of things they do tend to bring validity to that, but no one will ever know for sure unless you've actually been inside.
Yeah.
You know, but he didn't get killed out of nowhere for no reason. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
You know, so, but yeah, I think it's good that you touched on that. He was definitely important to this conversation. So to see him get to be with those people that kind of carried on his ideals in different ways was interesting. Also, quick note: Sam Cooke was murdered.
Yeah,
we were talking
that
about
I read about. And that was an interesting series.
That is a vast conspiracy.
Yeah, I was reading about
that is a vast conspiracy.
Yeah, because I was reading all about that. I was like, I wonder how he died. Was he just like an overdose, something like that happened with a lot of famous people? I read. I was like,
no, it's not an overdose. Like he was doing something that he was known for doing, and everybody knew what he was known for doing, but they decided to follow him this time. And a lot of things happened on accident.
Yeah.
That ended up in this man somehow being executed by a shotgun.
Was it? Yeah, because I remember something like he got. And that was interesting because they mentioned it was like on the one hand, like the story that was corroborated by the manager, like the manager who was off site, the girl who supposedly who I guess called the police, and then the person who was attending the thing like lined up fairly well, but they said there were some other things that didn't.
Yeah, there's like several official stories. But even still, other than the murder, there's other parts of that too, but it's too long to get into.
Yeah,
so we can talk about it afterwards.
Yeah, but it was so insane reading that, where it's just like, it's like, yeah. So long story short, he either went on one hell of a bender and basically like tried to do something to a girl he was with, or he got the other theories that he got set up by like his manager or something like that.
Yeah, and more people involved and more.
Yeah.
He was famously lecherous, famously cheated on his wife multiple times.
Did not know about that part.
It was that was a normal thing to see him out with a different woman every night.
Well, that tracks. All right.
Yeah.
Well,
so, yeah.
All those fun topics.
But the reason why we can have these conversations is because the film, even though the meeting was fictitious, who these characters they were so real. They depicted them exactly the way they were.
Yeah.
Now, do any of these characters people actually knew each other in real life, or is that all like fictitious?
They did know each other. Black people in the spotlight were very few.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about these guys in a room. You're talking about Martin Luther King. You're talking about Nichelle Nichols on Star Trek.
Yeah, where she like personally visited him.
Yeah, and then Lena Horne, and a handful of popular actors and dancers, and I mean,
yeah,
they were moving Black America forward. There was tons of Black performers, tons of Black people doing things, but the focus of attention, maybe Eartha Kitt, the original Catwoman.
Yeah.
They were really the ones. You could put them all in a room.
Yeah.
At that point.
Man, that's what we're thinking about.
And I just had random realization. So I mentioned like this is one of the interesting things about like that I thought was so fucking genius, like in the way that Sam Cooke was portrayed, was how he was a very good businessman. He wasn't just an entertainer. Yeah. And I just realized that tied into something that happened at the beginning. Because the first time you see him, he's at the Copacabana, and he's singing one of his songs. And one of the things you hear in the audience is, "I like the Debbie Reynolds version better."
Oh yeah.
And then it just dawned on me, oh my God, that was a setup for his whole deal. Like, it wasn't a case of him getting screwed over. That was a case of him probably playing the game.
Yeah.
And it just, because he mentions, like, afterwards, I mentioned, I can't, what was the song that he mentioned with the people he worked with? But he mentioned.
He talked about the Muddy Waters Rolling Stones song.
Yeah. Well, no, because it wasn't. He's saying that Rolling Stones is named after Muddy Waters because like they were like a kind of a blues rock hybrid, or they
but also they chose to cover one of his songs, and that's where they got the idea for the name as well.
Yeah, but
Cadillac Records.
Yeah, but he mentioned how like the guy that this artist who worked under him, he got approached by the Rolling Stones to cover a song. The song that like at his best got did really well in the R&B billboards. And like 94 on the top 100. And he said, yeah, Rolling Stones approached us. My guy was like, no, I'm not going to let you do this, but it's my record label. So I had final say. And so we made it. That song went to #1. Like, not R&B, like the #1 of pop and the Billboard. And like my guy was so bummed out until 6 months later after he started getting those royalty checks in. And it's funny because I remember like there's so many instances of that happening in the music industry, like Twist and Shout, for example. You know, they mentioned the Beatles. How
the Beatles exist because of black artists.
Yeah,
they really do. They really do.
Was Twist and Shout done by a black artist? I'm trying to remember who originally did it. Isley. Yeah, the Isley Brothers.
Yeah,
and
Twist
how
and
like
Shout? Yeah.
And like that song when it first came out was not super popular, but when the Beatles did that. Up to the top it went.
Well, yeah. Even before anybody knew who the Beatles were, they were doing covers of black soul music, in Liverpool, in little hole in the wall clubs.
Yeah,
yeah.
Oh, what was it called? Sorry, I'm a Beatles fan. And the fact I forgot what the play was. It the Cavern Club?
I think so. I think so. But yeah, even Ringo sang back then. They were doing covers like he sang one of the songs that they did that was a cover. I can't remember. Yeah. I think it was something like Boys, Boys, Boys or something.
Yeah, Boys. Devil in Her Heart was a cover as well. Mm-hmm. But I mean, regardless, that showed like the smarts that Sam Cooke had, but it also kind of showed. Oh, I just realized we are running low on meeting time.
I was trying to tell you guys that. You guys wouldn't let me get a word in.
Hey, we are having an excellent conversation.
But
it's just so you guys are aware, Zoom is clocking us out at like 8 minutes and 30 seconds, so probably have to like stop.
Okay, we'll speed it along. But yes, Sam Cooke is a precursor for business people who are black, such as ding 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 Michael Jackson.
Yeah. So but and of course this did make the whole sad point about he thought he was, gaming the system. Like it's like I'm making these white boys work for me. I don't have to do crap now except write the song. They do the performance. I get better checks than when I like charted on these things. And it's like simultaneously like from what I saw, it's like it was kind of empowering, but also simultaneously kind of sad that it's like it's not the real power that they were looking for.
Well, and that's where Malcolm X comes in and says the reason why you're not topping the charts with your own stuff is because you're not doing anything with any power in it.
Yeah.
And he straight of all cases, he points out Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But he was right.
He is.
He was right.
And that is one of the things I loved about this movie was there weren't exactly, it's, as, Sam said, it wasn't all black and white, but like each person, they each had good points. Like they might have not all been 100% right, but each one had like a piece of the puzzle. And seeing how it's like you could understood why they went the way they did and like why it worked for them and also, how to make it work for others. But
what I would amend that and I would say that what happened in that room is the collective conscious of all black people.
Yeah.
All the pieces have to come together to make something special or unique. Yeah. We often take only one or two of these tacks in our lives when we should be thinking about all of them equally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's something that me and Graham were talking about after we watched the movie the first time, is just the idea of what it actually takes to make a difference in the Black community, because it is such a complex, diverse topic. While it's like Sam Cooke definitely takes a more capitalistic approach and pretends to create power with that. Malcolm X definitely wants to, like, as a singular collective unit, and everyone play their part in it. And everyone, it's kind of like individualism versus like a group movement in a lot of ways, and how these people approach it.
Well, and Jim Brown and Muhammad Ali, they dedicate themselves to excellence. They win. That's how they affected the conversation. They win. Had Colin Kaepernick been a 2-time Super Bowl champion when he kneeled, we'd be having a very different conversation right now.
Mm-hmm.
Just pointing that out.
Yeah, I was like, but that, like, I think that was something I was talking about before, because something I was researching recently is the idea of like individual exceptionalism. How much does that help the case for racial equality?
Well, right off the top of my head, I can say excellence begets more excellence. Excellence also creates the traction to believe in said excellence in African American community.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if we keep supporting excellence keeps happening. We no longer get to have the conversation where, for example, for years it was expected in the NFL that a black person couldn't be quarterback. They lacked the tactical coherence.
Mm-hmm.
They lack the ability to learn in the ways that a white quarterback could. That's why they could never do that. That was common knowledge. That was Beltway wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
All the people that are excellent in the NFL right now that are quarterbacks are, I want to say, 80-90% black. They're the ones literally changing the game. Patrick Mahomes is throwing no look passes with a football. Okay,
those were words.
That changes things.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, so Michael, if you want to know what a no look pass is, it's when you look this way, you throw the other way, and it's 100% accurate.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory for that one.
Yes. So yeah, there are black quarterbacks making people look like damn fools right now.
Mm.
Okay.
I think the kind of argument that I've heard, and I'm curious for your input on this as well, is the idea that like black exceptionalism also means that you can ignore the other problems that are hindering other people from reaching that same level of success.
By which you mean white people ignoring
that again is talked about in this film is to be disconnected from your community. That is the only legitimate complaint that you could levy against a guy like Sam Cooke.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Sam Cooke is driving around California throwing money out the top of his car. Okay. If you did that in Alabama, you would have been hung.
Yeah.
Literally hung in that same era, in that same year.
Because it's seen as a threat to power, basically. Right?
Exactly. And they didn't care who you were.
And that seems to be a revolving theme around the film as well, is that discussion of like, okay, we don't want power in that we want to rule over anyone else. We want power as like, hey, recognize us as equal human beings. That
but also power to define your own destiny.
Yeah, and the question is like, how do you like? What's the best way not only to help yourself reach that, but other help people in your community reach that as well?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And that seems to be the central discussion. That's the central point. That's what the movie is basically about. It uses these historical figures to
and I love that where they get in the fight and he leaves with Muhammad Ali and they go to the convenience store.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
He breaks off chump change to that guy that's walking into the convenience store. Did you see how much food they fucking walked out with?
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
That right there is what I'm talking about. That is the power of black excellence. You can literally change the fortunes of other black people literally just by being around them.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? That dude probably hadn't eaten that good all week.
I guess what I'm wondering personally, just in this conversation, is how much is that black excellence weaponized by white people against other black people?
Well, I mean, the easiest and obvious example is guys like Sam Cooke. Let's put it this way. I'll leave Sam Cooke out of the equation. I'll say this: when a black person exhibits black excellence, and they have taken it to heights never before perceived or reached by another black person, the immediate thing that the consensus of white people seeking to keep them down will do is they will not belittle these people. They will not indemnify them. They will put them on a pedestal and they will close all the doors behind them.
Makes sense.
You understand? It will be like, yes, that's Muhammad Ali, but you can never be like Muhammad Ali. Don't even try. He's just the greatest. That's why he called himself the greatest. He backed it up. Everybody started calling him the greatest because they didn't want another opinionated black dude like him to be the greatest.
Because
you know what I'm saying?
Because the funny thing was, like, me and Michael, what we were talking about was the whole idea was like white people are more like it was something along that lines where it's like, politically speaking, it's like, oh look, see, using that as an excuse for if someone can't reach that pedestal again, that it's basically that they consider it their fault that they can't. Because like, oh exactly. Look, this person became an awesome boxer. Why can't you pull yourself up by your bootstraps? You know that.
Yeah. See.
Also, we got less than a minute.
Okay, I'm gonna stop right there for a second. We're gonna take this opportunity to take a commercial break. We'll be right back right after these messages. And we're back. Boy, those products sure did sound terrific. You should look into those things.
Anyway, I too was excited to see local sports team be terrific.
Yay, sports. Anyway, where were we?
It cured my cancer. It gave me cancer.
And I guess that
cancels it out.
Sorry, I'm like, football saves, hockey kills.
But to pick it up from where we left off was I think the question you were asking was how much do people like this actually influence the movement and the progression of the Black cause?
Yeah, it's more like how much does it help, and how, like, what kind of inadvertent side effects does it have?
Well, let's put it this way: in the period in which this film takes place, it was everything.
Mm-hmm.
It was everything. You could not move the needle without it. Mm-hmm. Where we are now, as a result of those choices and decisions, there are many other ways to get it done, and there are many more progressive things to do than just be famous.
Mm-hmm. And like, it would have had more impact back then because this was like right before the Civil Rights Act, right?
Well, but also it's before the Civil Rights Movement loses its two leaders.
Mm-hmm.
69, I believe that happens.
Yeah, because that's when. Yeah, because that 65 was when Malcolm X was killed. 69 was when.
69 when Malcolm X was killed as well.
Really? Yeah. Is it mentioned in the end
February 20 something?
Oh, that's weird. Because I remember in the movie it mentioned like he made this quote like in 1965. 2 days later, he was assassinated or something like that.
Oh no, it was 65. You're right. 69 is Martin Luther King. So I apologize.
Yeah, oddly enough, I remember for the longest time I always thought it was Martin Luther King was killed first. Then it was Malcolm X.
Yeah, actually in reverse.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say. I would say now as a result of the things that happened then, and by the way, there's this common misconception that the civil rights movement fixed everything. It absolutely did not.
No.
The Voters' Rights Act and the progressive change that happened almost from that point to now seems like an isolated incident.
Yeah.
I mean, in a lot of ways.
I mean, it wasn't even that long ago if you really think about it. It just feels.
Well, you're talking about my father's last 3 years of high school. When all of this happened.
Yeah, so it's more like it's crazy to think about. And you realize like how much has changed and how much just hasn't, or how things have found a new way to evolve from that. That still allow the same hierarchies to come and play.
Right. Well, yeah, and in some places in America, still the same exact methods of everything that's being done against Black people still being employed.
Oh yeah. A lot, like, as far as I know, like, especially to my knowledge, I don't want to pretend to be an expert or anything like that, but was police brutality just as bad like in the 80s as it was back in the 60s, or is it better or worse?
Well, we'll see. Here's the thing. What happens in the 80s, remember, like, follow it through the conclusion. The 1970s, powder cocaine. 1979, crack. Crack begins the war on drugs.
Yeah.
which is really the war on people of color.
Yep.
Okay, so what happens then is ridiculously long prison sentences for people of color selling the crack, not wondering where the cocaine comes from to make the crack.
Yep.
You know, and then you have impoverished parts of the country that are nothing but poor black people on drugs. So
Meanwhile,
that becomes the new normal.
The war on drugs also encouraged different grants and funding for the police, which also heavily induces like the SWAT teams, militarizes the police forces, when incentivized to go after black neighborhoods.
Exactly.
And this leads into this whole recursive cycle. Then
which comes into mass incarceration, which goes into the 90s, and there you have
it. Renewed like today, like even Obama renewed a lot of the funding that promotes going after like drug cases. And it's like, yeah, it's because like how much has changed, how much stayed exactly the same, and unfortunately, it's a big part of it. It goes by a different name.
Right, it goes by a different name, but the system is the same. It's
and a different label, so we don't have to protect. Yeah. You don't have to pay attention to it, which is kind of what I was talking about before.
Well, and now that leads to, you know, it's 2020 and or it's 2021 now, thank God, and you can kill a black person and sprinkle some drugs on them and be like, oh, typical, you know.
And the way the court has worked out in that favor is the fact that it's impossible to prosecute a police officer or sue them for discrimination at this point, which is an unfortunate reality. So I guess the question I was that's kind of posed in this movie as well, and the fact that issues are just as relevant now as they were then, is like, what is the best way to go about doing something about that? Because Malcolm X is clearly in support of like larger group movements. Some people employ like, oh, let's do like a smaller, let's work within the system to try to fix it. So it goes into the fact like what has historically worked and what historically hasn't, and what way forward is there with that context.
Well, I mean, there's no funnel to just put all the good stuff in, right?
That's true. Yeah.
So what I would say is continue to exist beyond expectations of what people set up for you, whether you're black or whatever. You know, I mean that's another thing that we need to acknowledge as well. Without white people or people of European descent deciding they were going to be different, you know, this still wouldn't have any effect.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so the longer black people exist, I think the more people realize how wrong they were.
So you're saying it's a generational thing?
Yeah, you know, the more we exist, the more we grow and learn and change and exchange with other people, the better it becomes.
Yeah. And I will say the interesting thing about that, though, now is to the point where, you know, to use a quote that they mentioned in that movie, that whole idea of, you know, white people giving, I can't remember if I mentioned this review or not, the idea like white people kind of give themselves the medal for not being an asshole, basically.
Well, yeah, that's part of it, yeah.
And it brings up an interesting point, the whole idea of, you know, how many of us have gotten better versus how much, you know, we just think we're better. That whole idea, like, we still got things down there because...
Well, yeah, point to that first scene with Bo Bridges.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With Jim Brown. That's exactly the way it is, bro.
Yeah.
That's the way it is. And it's still that way. They just don't say it openly. It's still that way.
Yeah. And it's funny because, like, I remember talking to a friend of mine about that whole idea of like the northern racism versus the southern racism, whereas in like northern racism, is the idea that white, you know, we can be racist when someone who, you know, when a minority is the exception to something, where it's like, don't be racist. But what's the Chris Rock joke where someone, it's like, if he comes in and he steals your car, then you can shout, that N-word stole my car or something like that.
Right.
Versus, you look at the Southern racism where it's like, you're kind of racist towards the whole group, except then it's the inverse. Racist towards a group, but except for this one, this one person's like, oh, but he's not like that. He's basically part of the family.
Well, yeah. Well, that's the thing. Racism in the South is a football team.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. If you're unless you have personally done something for that racist person, they'll look you a person they've never met before. You ain't shit. Your mom ain't shit. Yeah. Your daddy ain't shit. Your kids ain't gonna be shit. You're never gonna be shit. Blah 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 blah. They're a football team. They're rah, go team. Anybody against us, fuck you. They ain't checking for understanding.
It always goes back to, well, you're just one of the good ones.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's what I mean.
Yeah,
that's what I mean. Like they're a football team at this point. They're they have their side and they're sticking to it.
Yeah.
What's going to be very curious to see now is I feel like it's definitely like I know we're talking more topical stuff, but we're very much coming to see all of this where it's been building to for the last several decades, kind of coming to what feels like a head. And it's going to be very curious to see what the fallout that's going to be, whether we as a country are going to double down on what's bad about it, or they're actually going to try to push forward and move forward. Yeah. Which, of course, is definitely a wait-and-see thing. Now, unfortunately, those on the GOP side of things definitely have seen a lean towards the former, unfortunately. And it's hard to determine now where that latter, while definitely it still exists, where that's going to come down in the long term.
Well, I'm an optimist, but also I can see the signs. What this is with the GOP is a death rattle. This is not what's going to be normal going forward.
I certainly hope so.
They're not going to be able to operate like this for very much longer.
No, for sure.
The fact,
because
it's like the fact that like more and more Republicans, like the fact that like even got frickin' 10 Republican congressmen who voted in favor to impeach Trump, for example.
Yeah,
and there's like several senators, including even Mitch McConnell, who's talking about things about saying, impeaching Trump, probably not a bad idea right now. It's like,
well, yeah, and his wife worked for him.
Yeah.
Didn't he go back? Didn't he backtrack on that though recently?
Yeah, I can't remember what it was.
I don't think he did. I think some people who were backing impeachment did.
Okay.
I think Mitch McConnell's pretty. He's pretty feet planted. Yeah, we'll do this.
Yeah, you might be thinking of Lindsey Graham because I know.
Lindsey Graham always flip flopping.
Yeah, because
that dude, Lindsey Graham need to be in the Grayson Flying Circus. That's all I gotta say.
Right. It's not as bad as Lady Marjorie, as I think I've heard her being called. Right now, it's
oh yeah, that whole thing.
Which is more that one is always great to shove in people's face. It's equal on both sides. AOC is the same as this.
Come on,
AOC
man.
believes it's wrong to discriminate against people.
Come on, man.
Marjorie believes in Jewish space lasers.
Yeah, Jewish space lasers, bro. Jewish.
Not even hyperbole.
Okay. First of all, Jewish space lasers kind of sound like a cool job.
I know, kind of, right?
Don't knock it till we try it. All right.
I'm thinking she saw the History of the World part 1, and when she saw that segment in the end of History of the World Part 2, the trailer, she probably thought it was a documentary at that point. I don't know.
Well, yeah,
that's the only explanation.
Just like some people, the gods must be crazy. They think that's a documentary. I'm like, y'all tripping.
Which one is that again?
It's the one about an African country where a Coke bottle drops off a plane, and the narrator invents this story about this little kid discovering the Coke bottle and wondering what it might be used for and all this stuff. But it's not the African boy's thoughts. It's this man saying what it is, right? So, and it's meant to be satire. It's meant to be comedy. It's meant to make fun of documentaries, but people take that shit serious all the time. There's 2 of them. It's called The Gods Must Be Crazy.
It's kind of like when things you realize are meant as jokes for taking so seriously now, Schrodinger's cat was originally meant as a joke. Then everyone now takes it super seriously. And the same with, ironically enough, the Republican phrase, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. It was originally a joke because it's impossible to do that without help. So...
Well, but then it became their fucking rally cry.
Yep.
They took it serious.
It's isn't there? Yeah, it's wait, we're talking about the paradox bootstrap? I should probably just start.
Oh, go ahead.
I should probably just throw that out there next time someone says pull yourselves up by the bootstraps. Isn't that kind of a paradox?
No, it's pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You think the Egyptians built pyramids with the kind of attitude you have? They didn't even have shoes. Anyway,
I think they slipped those things on pretty easily from what I remember. I don't know.
But yeah, just in I guess the question for that is if that is the case, if it does become a death rattle, which I agree, I think that's probably what's going to happen.
I think it's a death rattle.
Because
it's just bad for business. It just they love money, bro.
It's not sustainable as a model.
Yeah,
It
it's
runs too
not
much on hate and
sustainable.
chaos. It's
Mhm.
gonna blow up in their face. It already is. But I guess what I'm wondering is like after that fallout happens, like what happens after that? Like what would the next steps be to make sure these kind of things like to actually eliminate the systems that cause these inequalities while you have the opportunity to do something about it?
Well, the the first step to healing this country and rebuilding relationships with Black Americans is this. It's not going to sound serious, but it's the most serious thing ever. We need written acknowledgement of everything that happened before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Honestly, if you want to start the conversation, if you want my ears to perk up, if you want me to start thinking compromise, that's what I need.
Yeah.
Now,
you know, from
is
there,
that going to come from the people that are currently living though?
it has to come from somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it has to be officially acknowledged. That's all I'm saying. Just like they wrote that Black people are 3/5 of a human being. I want it written somewhere that that's bullshit. That a slave practice of 400 years happened, and it's a disgrace upon America. It needs to be written somewhere.
I'd be okay.
Okay, that first acknowledgement. Just like, for example, just like the Equal Rights Amendment, people are so afraid of that. Really, one of the only things that the Equal Rights Amendment does is that it changes all men are created equal to all men and women are created equal under the law. That's it. And they are so afraid to even write that down. Okay, because of what it would do. That's what I mean. For Black America, that's the first thing we need, right? Then the second thing we need is we need to understand fully, completely what the Black Americans' needs are today as opposed to what they were when all this bullshit began, because it's incredibly different.
Yeah.
And things have changed, right? So whatever that looks like, I can't say what that looks like in the end because I don't even know where we're going to be 5 years from now.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
Right, but if you seriously want to open the hearts of Black Americans to compromise and understanding and learning and listening, it has to happen. Otherwise, it will always be looked at with a cynical lens, a critical eye. We will not believe you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you
makes
know,
complete sense.
collectively. Any thoughts? Anyone else?
I think that is a fair assessment of what needs to be done. Because it's like, as you mentioned, things are constantly evolving. And as you mentioned, some people are kind of too focused on the past.
Right.
In terms of not just solutions, but in terms of like, progress that was made back then, seeing that as like this huge goalpost. And I'll totally acknowledge that.
Well, I think it kind of comes. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, and other big thing I got to I'll mention is like on that topic of the whole white people metal thing, is some of us still have biases, and there's nothing wrong with admitting that. It's like I'll totally admit it. It's like I do my best to actively not be an asshole about these things, but even in the back of my head, I know there are still those weird little things that go ping, ping, ping when I know there's no reason for those stupid things to go. And it's like, it's one of those things that I freaking hate. And like when, that I've got to, that I try to acknowledge as well.
But Grant, bias is like inherently American. You shouldn't feel bad for that. What we need to exhume from America is this idea that if you have a bias, you can have a legally supported one. You know what I mean? Like you can be supported by law to discriminate against someone.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. Is the idea of like it's as I mentioned, there's like the explicit racism and the implicit racism. The whole idea, we mentioned the whole North versus South thing.
Yeah.
And the whole idea of like, even if you don't like explicitly think something, there are still those thoughts that can like be in the back of your mind that you don't even realize are guiding your actions. And we see the harm that causes. like as you mentioned, these instances where like, we've seen a black man get shot because even if someone says, I'm not racist, something in the back of their head sets them off. And
yeah. For example, they'll shoot somebody, and everybody in the place will be, why the fuck did you shoot the person? And the first thing they say is, I'm not racist.
Yeah.
I didn't ask you that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Being called racist and actually doing not racist things.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, from my perspective, it's not about having biases or anything like that, because we all have biases to some extent. It's more like, are you willing to recognize those biases when they are brought up to your attention, and are you willing to learn to do better?
Yeah, and that's what I was trying to get at. The idea of being to see them so like you can actually properly educate yourself, educate others in trying to be aware of these, and if you're aware of them, finding ways to eliminate them or know how to stop them from like making that unfortunate turn if like they're going to.
Well, yeah, like police officers are legally not allowed to discriminate against people, but they are legally allowed to profile people.
Yep.
So that's their loophole. You see what I'm saying? Like, how can you discriminate against people and have all these instances in which the law supports you and think it's not going to end up being the norm?
Yep.
You know?
I think I read something not too long ago. It said police officers are legally allowed to discriminate people on a plane alone by this absurd list of criteria. That says like people who got on a plane first, people who got on a plane last, people who got a plane in the middle, like people who are staying too close, people too far apart. Basically, anything that says I can discriminate against anyone anytime for any reason is what basically
exactly.
And I'm legally supported by the courts to do this. And
right, but then when you claim bias, they're like shocked for some reason. I'm like, bruh, like you have to know what you're doing. Like, has little to no demarcation. You have these broad swaths of things that you can do for whatever reason you want.
And when
I was gonna say to Kimber, like a good example of like how like that could be combated as I want to say it was actually Richmond PD of all things, because I believe they actually, if I can't remember if that's the city, that was the right city I'm thinking of, but I remember how they had like these awareness trainings, these things about how they educate the officers, like be aware of these things. I believe that like brought down officer involved shootings like that by a pretty good degree, and like how that I like I said, I could be remembering it wrong and I could be remembering the wrong city, but that's something to look into.
Well, yeah. Let me make another example. Something that your biased audience that you tend to have, Michael, might appreciate. Okay. If I grew up in the South and was mercilessly bullied, beaten, and ridiculed by white people my entire life, and I became a police officer, okay, and the three of us pull over a white guy who seems like he's strung out, has a weapon, and is in his car, and I got to decide what to do, I'm going to turn to you guys and I'm going to be like, you guys make the call. I'm not impartial. You understand? It's as simple as that. I don't have to tell you why. I don't have to tell you the reasons in my mind why that needs to happen. All I know is if I walk over there, I'm probably going to shoot this dude. Mm-hmm. Okay? So you guys got to look at the evidence. You guys got to make the call, because I'm not impartial. I can't do this. Mm-hmm. Why can't they do that with each other? Why can't they do that?
Yeah.
That strikes me as a few things. A lot of it, from at least from what I've read, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on the topic, but a lot of it goes down to the culture of uniformed officers in general. Is the fact that, unfortunately, the way the system is designed right now, especially with like incentives to basically keep the money you find on drug busts and discriminate on the stop and frisk clause to basically to keep those arrest numbers up. Basically in a position where bad police behavior is actively rewarded, while attempts by good police officers called the bad ones to fix the issues usually really isn't punishment.
Well, yeah, that complicates things, but I'm talking about most of these killings, most of this brutality happens on regular stops.
Yeah.
This isn't happening on suspected drug use or nothing. It's like, oh, your headlight's out. I'm pulling you over, and then I'm emptying a clip into your fucking bag.
Oh, that would go into like the police wolf training, which is something that another disturbing part of it.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, because
I'm sorry. Let me finish this thought, Grant, before you get over it.
You first.
is the idea, like, from what I've seen, a lot of it boils down to this really toxic mindset of you're the wolf, they're the sheep. There's a wolf among sheep that can attack you at any time. Therefore, you must assume that anyone can kill you at any moment, which encourages native hostility. You add that with racial bias that's embedded in the system to begin with, and that creates a toxic culture.
There's one caveat to that. Is that you are a sanctioned wolf, and your the other job other than being a wolf is to defend the sheep with your life.
Mm-hmm.
Which means inherently that if you have to give your life to protect the sheep, that's what you do.
Yeah,
it's not just about your life.
In the most idealistic way, that'd be true.
That's the oath they take. That I'm not making that up.
Oh, I know.
You know, that's the thing that they signed up to do.
And yet it's very much taught as a way of everyone is your enemy. You can only trust each other.
And this is something that's kind of interesting about that too, because like a lot of my family are police officers, and I'm glad that they're the good ones, like for sure. Like I do honestly believe that like there are more good than bad, but I also acknowledge that there needs to be reform within the systems, because as we've seen different people take advantage of these systems in different ways. Some of them maybe not even knowing it, some of them very clearly knowing it. Like was the one in Ferguson, for example. Like I remember seeing that whole thing where like I call it from the beginning, where it's like I'm not, based on the way that the Department of Justice found things, was like it's going to be a case of maybe this cop was, quote unquote justified. But I could tell based on everything else of that PD as a whole was messed up. And as the Department of Justice investigations went in and the news reports came in, it became way more apparent. It was like, oh, dear Lord, this is like just an entire freaking corrupt city.
Well, and then, you're totally right.
Yeah, because it was a case where it was like we saw the reports of like the officers like shouting racial slurs, the whole idea of like Department of Justice doing their investigations about like which I'm sure you've mentioned is a common thing, is the disproportionate amount of people being arrested, people of color versus white people. The whole idea is like percentage wise, it didn't match up basically with the population.
Well, yeah, the Capitol officially ends that argument.
Yeah.
The Capitol, the storming of the Capitol ends that argument. Now, like you said, a lot of your family are police officers. I bet we pay police officer salaries largely. Yeah. I bet if we were to profile them to enter our precincts and police us the way that they profile us, they would consider that unfair. Yeah. I mean, if I could look at a line of police officers and decide who I want to patrol my area because I literally pay their salary, and I'm like, nope, that one looks like he's gonna beat me, they'd be like, but you don't know me, bro.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that is very true from what I see with a lot of officers, because I've seen like the case where it's just like, and even with with officers and civilians, I've seen so many cases where we've seen how they're going to deny the white officer being racist, or they're going to say, well, what about when this black officer shot this white guy? Why is no one making a big deal about that? How do you know that wasn't racially motivated? And it's like, that's not the point. And it's exactly the point that you're making, that whole idea of the double standard.
Is that you're supposed to protect me.
Yeah,
which means even if there's some negative or aggressive tendency about me, you're supposed to do everything you can to protect me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if I'm the one causing the trouble. That's the point. Somebody somewhere, someone that I'm related to paid your salary at some point.
Yeah.
You got to protect me too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's why I agree. Like there needs to be major reform to make sure things like this don't happen. Like what was that? What was the thing that was being brought up during the George Floyd and like the Breonna Taylor protests, like that Make It 8 deal or something like that, where they said these are like 8 changes that you can make to try and reduce police brutality, like the whole idea of focusing more on how to do the proper negotiations, saving like that gun thing is the last deal. I can't remember what the whole was. It was like 8 specific things, and the cool thing was like the website actually showed you which of these policies each police department enacted.
Actually has.
Yeah. And they broke it down at an individual level. and it was a fascinating like sight and like an actually actionable one that I was really rooting for, that I hope could take a bigger hold. I'd say definitely check those out if you can.
Okay.
If I can remember it, because
But and also to throw this in there, I was intrigued by the defund the police movement conversation, but really what I've settled on is that we need to refund internal affairs. They hate those guys anyway. You know what I'm saying? Like the police. I like that.
yeah, no, I think that's fair. Yeah. And the funny thing is, like
I think the problem with that though is there have been studies that have shown that when police try to police each other, then nobody actually gets punished.
Well, I would encourage you to actually look into internal affairs. They have popped some shit off in many precincts around the country that police officers hate because it holds them to a higher standard.
Yeah,
I think that's always been their reputation. Is that for every one person that they let go, they put in 10 under like that.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? Internal affairs has a pretty squeaky clean reputation.
Oh, I think I misunderstood what you were saying.
Especially. No, I said refund internal affairs, like infuse cash into policing the police.
Okay,
because internal affairs.
I said refund the. Wait, I thought you meant like take money away from them or like something like that.
No.
No,
Okay,
I meant putting
same
money
page,
into the independent investigation organization that looks after the police.
Then yes, I completely agree with that. Yes,
You know.
Yeah, because I was gonna say on that whole like defund the police thing, like that, and that was another interesting thing that I remember analyzing, the whole idea of like the varying degrees.
By the way, guys, just a reminder: we have 8 minutes left.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I will say this was also interesting, the whole idea of talking to officers about that whole thing about, even if we kind of went with the whole refunding programs thing, for example. I'm not saying I necessarily agree with it in either way, because like I could see how in some places it's worked, and I know in other places it hasn't necessarily. But doing that whole thing where they, take funding out of the police, putting that into social programs to like aid them. And how I talked to officers, how they mentioned, yeah, we have tried that already. And the problem is that eventually, this is just what I was told, that like these services would eventually pull out, the funding wouldn't go back to the police, and they're basically in the exact same boat again with less funding. And that's one of the arguments they make about it.
Oh, well, meanwhile, what happened on Saturday? What happened today? Do you guys know about this? Okay, anti-vaxxers rushed Dodger Stadium and stopped people from getting vaccines. Okay? They're unacceptable in LA. You know why? Because I know for a fact they got $1 billion budget to prevent shit like this from happening.
Oh, yeah.
LA is so where are your rubber bullets? Where's your riot gear? Where's the tank? Where's the APC? Okay, this is Dodger fucking Stadium.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I hate anti-vaxxers with a freaking passion.
And where were you? Where were you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like, where the hell is that money even going then? Like, if it's
but if I got a busted headlight and I'm in the wrong neighborhood, I'll see you. I'll see you shortly.
I mean, realistically, like, the social program's part of the police department, then that already solves the problem you're referring to, Grant. Because it's another department. It's not just a subset or
it's not. No, it's not. That's what I was saying. It's not a department. It's another agency.
Well, that's my point, though. You make it a department, then that solves that issue. The problem is the fact that, again, the incentive is to militarize the police as they are, so that way they can discriminate, which is what they've been doing for years.
And I agree, which is should not be a thing.
The discrimination is already taken care of. They're allowed to do it.
Yeah.
And you're just giving them more weapons and more means to do it.
And there's enough incentive there to keep that going versus actually doing anything to change that.
Right. Because there are metrics that can literally affect their pay.
Yeah.
That enable them to keep on carrying it out.
Because like realistically, the police force as it is, you only really need for violent crimes, and violent crimes takes up an incredibly small percentage of actual crimes that are committed.
Which also leads to another thing I'd like to mention that is definitely something I also agree needs to be getting rid of. Basically, the military equipment grants, where when the stuff is like decommissioned from the military, they basically give them to the police force for riot purposes. But it's like clearly they've got it wasn't even meant to be riot. It's for like anti-terror purposes, but they're using them for riot, for like either riots or protests. It's just like, you're already going way beyond what this stuff was meant for. You were told what to use it for. This is not that purpose.
Actually, it's not. I'm not sure that's true because that goes back to the start of the war on drugs. That was Reagan that started the sharing of military weapons with the police force.
Yeah. Well, I'm talking about like in more recent years when they've been recently giving them more stuff. Like that was, I believe, signed off.
That was the least of Reagan's issues.
For sure, but that was part of it. 4 minutes left.
I'm talking about Contra and not the side-scrolling shooter.
And also, he did such a great job handling the HIV and AIDS crisis too.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Okay, bring it back to where are we talking? At one point.
Oh yeah, let's get back to the movie with these last 4 minutes.
Yes, it all ties together. It all ties together.
But yeah, it ties together. It's the string theory that binds this whole thing together. Is that we these conversations that we're having were just as prevalent in 1965.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you know, and more so because they were able to openly do this to people on the sidewalk without getting in trouble with impunity. You know, it's only slightly changed, only a little bit.
Language.
Yeah, maybe the language or the procedure steps associated with doing it. So, but yeah, like to answer your question, to start finally healing this country of its original sin, really what we need is an official government statement acknowledging this atrocity. Okay, it has to acknowledge point A to point B. People from Africa taken against their will in the transatlantic slave trade, being brought to America, being forced to integrate into the system, being forced to be impoverished for generations, centuries, and then being put in systems that don't suit being impoverished for centuries, and the economic, socioeconomic, educational outcomes that are a result of that. It all needs to be documented, and it needs to be an official statement signed by whoever needs to sign it. And I want official acknowledgement of that with a rubber stamp. Okay. And honestly, I think had we done that in the 60s, the world would look different right now.
But sometimes people would rather live in corrupt and hateful systems than acknowledge that something is wrong with it.
Well, yeah, because the people that existed at that time, you know, most of them were happy. They didn't care. You know?
I kind of always think of that. This kind of reminds me of the Watchmen TV show that happened not too long ago. I'm not.
Don't spoil.
I'm not going to spoil. But basically, what
good show though. Good show.
Great show. But the message basically boiled down to at the end was
Regina King was actually in that, by the way.
Yeah, she was the main character.
She was the main character in that.
Basically, but the message itself boils down to wounds don't heal if you try to hide it. Like it has to breathe, and that's the same basic principle.
But also a saying my grandma used to say: it has to hurt to heal.
Yeah, absolutely.
If it's not hurting, you have a problem. If you're numb to it, you're probably gonna die.
See, now I'm seeing that story you told me a long time ago, Ron.
has to hurt to heal, man. And that works both ways.
Yeah.
You know, black people did a lot of the hurting for a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So to acknowledge that might hurt.
And we have to culturally, we need to acknowledge and process the weight of our sins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of like me with the whole, like I mentioned, you know, police, military background of my family. Even though, you know, I think they're great officers, and as I mentioned, I still think they're good officers. I still have to acknowledge there are problems within the system.
Well, dude, I grew up admiring police officers. Like there was this dude that came around my middle school, black police officer, named Officer Markham. I love that guy.
Okay. All right, guys. I'm going to cut you guys off here just so we can get final words in before I get cut off rudely by Zoom.
Excellent movie. Great about political topics and trying to start a conversation that we still need to have since the freaking 60s. Watch it. It's just great political conversations.
Yep. Great material, great characters, a great dance around historical events. Honestly, on another note, it was just nice and soothing just to see so many black people on the screen speaking at once. I just to say that soothes my soul, actually lets me know that there is progress being made. And I encourage everybody to watch it who's curious about this era. Okay.
Okay, now go ahead.
Okay, yeah, just progress being made. A good 15, 20 years ago, as a young guy, I could not conceive of a movie being made with this high a budget. So yes, but before you start to say that black people say that shit don't change, it does change, and it is changing. Just acknowledge us for all the shit you haven't changed yet.
All right. Just to add my 2 cents, I think this is a great film. I think it is wonderfully acted. I think it is wonderfully written. I think it is just as important now, as it was in time place. I think the conversation is just as important now as the time period in which they're discussing it in the film. Clearly, it's led to a lot of great discussions here, and I think it's definitely worth showing to anyone who just even remotely interested in this kind of topic and wants to learn more about it. I think these are great historical figures to learn that stuff from, and I think Sweet does a great job of capturing those voices. So yeah, there we go. Now we've had 3 times, and we finally got all the thoughts in there.
No trailers, Michael?
God, I miss those. It's like I was going through my memories on Facebook, and I saw one from Muha going like, "Man, remember we're seeing The Gentleman was the last oh God, who directed
Guy Ritchie?
Guy Ritchie, thank you. Guy Ritchie's The Gentleman. Was one of the last movies I saw in theaters last year. I was like, oh God, remember when that was a thing? Fuck. I miss theaters so much.
Check. Is that Guy Ritchie? Yeah, it was Guy Ritchie.
You guys gotta come see my play in February.
I'm down, man. I'm
playing it's on Zoom. I'm playing Dr. Charles Drew, the black hematologist from World War II.
Oh, cool.
He basically invented plasma transfer and blood transfusion.
I'm down for that.
Modern blood transfusion.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
It's called Brave Blood. It's cool. Cool little show.
All right. So I think that's all we got for that one. Where can we find this play, Ron?
You can find this play on townstreettheater.org. TST is the theater company that I'm a part of in LA. And and we usually perform in Hollywood, but since the Stella Adler Theater got closed down, we've been doing Zoom performances. So we'll drop the link, and Michael can add it later.
I will indeed.
While he reads the comments of people saying, "Why is this an ad?"
Oh, you saw those comments, did you?
I used to edit some of your videos. I read all the comments.
You will still when I eventually have a budget. By the way, support our Patreon. I'm broke as fuck. Thank you guys for watching. See y'all later.